Welcome to episode 62 of the Perrysburg podcast. I am your host and Perrysburg resident, Kim Newlove. If you are new to this podcast, welcome. The Perrysburg podcast is an informational podcast for prospective, new, and current Perrysburg, Ohio residents. We talk about what's in Perrysburg and why people like to live here. Our website is perrysburgpodcast.com. Today's episode is an interview with Pastor Melanie Forrey from Zoar Lutheran Church. Zoar Lutheran Church is located at 314 East Indiana Avenue in Perrysburg, Ohio. The website is zoarlutheran.com. During our interview, Pastor Melanie shares what brought her from Montana to Perrysburg, what Zoar offers as a church home, worship service days and times, who leads worship, youth involvement, including mission trips, confirmation classes, Sunday school, etc., programs offered for people of all ages, community outreach, groups who use Zoar's space, Zoar's web presence, including social media channels, upcoming events at Zoar in the building and outside of the building in the Perrysburg community, and more. We cover a lot in this 40-minute conversation. This episode continues a series of interviews with faith community leaders here in Perrysburg. Places of worship are important to Perrysburg residents. To hear the other episodes in this series, check out episodes 30, 34, and 40. Episode 30 introduced the series. Episode 34 was an interview with Pastor Mark Wentz from Lutheran Church of the Master, and episode 40 was an interview with Pastor Dan Gildner from Grace Church, Perrysburg. I'll put that list in the show notes on perrysburgpodcast.com. Feel free to listen to the entire series. I am taking nominations for the next Faith Community Leader interview for this series. To nominate a future guest, go ahead and message me through the website, which is perrysburgpodcast.com, or go ahead and email me at kim@perrysburgpodcast.com. Back to our guest for today. Pastor Melanie Forrey does a great job of introducing herself right at the top of the interview. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Pastor Melanie Forrey. Hi, Pastor Melanie. Welcome to the Perrysburg podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so excited and a little nervous.
First timer, eh?
Yes.
Nothing wrong with that. I'm glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, Pastor Melanie, how did you come to be Zoar's pastor?
That is a longer story than we have time for, but the highlights, I have felt called to ministry for as long as I can remember. I was always the child who would ask the questions that made the pastor cringe in church, and was always very curious about everything in ways that now looking back, I know were my call already present in my engagement with God. Moving into early adulthood, I felt my call really strongly, and I was a mom, a teen mom, so I started very early in parenthood. And that comes with challenges. So when I started to explore my path to ministry, it felt really overwhelming. It required multiple degrees and overcoming challenges just that were natural in my experience of a young mom and a person with a young family. So I pushed it out of my mind because that seemed impossible. But calls are pesky, and they don't let us go. Over the years, it kept sneaking up, and I would push it away. And then several years ago, I guess would be 6 now, I got a call from somebody. I was working as a church secretary, and I got a call from somebody saying, "I heard you were going to seminary." And I thought, who are you? No, I'm not. And then my mom called, who works in our synod. She let me know about a scholarship opportunity to attend seminary, which seemed very odd, this timing. And sometimes I fall into the child mother pattern where I don't always take what my mom says as good advice at first and have to learn the hard way. So I thought no. And then I got another phone call advising me to apply or consider it. And so I did. And all of these barriers fell down that I had built or that I perceived, reasons why I wasn't good enough for ministry, why it would be impossible or too hard for my family. At this point, I had all of my 4 children, so I have 4 children, and was the primary caretaker of my children. So all of this seemed very challenging, and it became possible as God tends to make things. So I started attending seminary at Luther Seminary, which has a very good distance learning program. And I would go every couple of months for classes in St. Paul, Minnesota, which was a new experience, leaving my children and going off by myself into this world of education that was hugely transformational. Through the process, it took us from Montana, this little town in Montana, into a bigger city in Montana. There's not really big cities in Montana, for my internship, which was an adjustment. And then from internship to Ohio, which was very unexpected. My internship ended somewhat abruptly. So I needed to finish my degree requirements within a couple of months. And the suggestion was to do a unit of CPE, which is clinical pastoral education. The challenge was I would need to find a program that fit the time frame that had an opening. And so this was late April, and I would need to finish by August. So I reached out to a program in Boise where my parents live, and a program in Toledo where my brother and his family live, knowing that we would very likely need to rely on family temporarily. And Toledo responded at St. Vincent after some conversations and a couple of days, really. They asked if I could be here in 2 weeks. And so we, following our faith, which is a hard journey, we loaded up our trailers and our 4 kids, myself and my husband, and our 2 dogs at the time, and our cat, and traveled from Montana to Ohio, where we lived with my brother and his wife for a couple of months before finding a house. And I did an internship at St. Vincent, which was so incredible, an opportunity for deep reflection of myself and my strengths and my growing edges. I grew in awareness and skill, and also was invited into this real hands-on work of Jesus through chaplaincy. And I decided to stay and apply to do a residency there while the church process continued. Candidacy is a lengthy process of discernment and community, and it takes time. And anytime things go a little differently than normal, it takes extra time. So there was a bit of a delay there. So I was doing a chaplain residency at St. Vincent while that continued, which was something I will continue to be grateful for. There were definitely parts of that that were very challenging in ways of schedule and systemic dysfunction. And there were so many beautiful opportunities to grow that I will never be the same because of. I finished my residency and moved into the first call process here in the Northwestern Ohio Synod of the ELCA. And an opportunity presented itself to come and interview at Zoar, which the timing of these things is always very surprising and then not surprising when we lean into our experience of faith. I was so moved by the welcoming spirit here at Zoar, and the opportunity to lean into my call for ministry here, I can't imagine doing it somewhere else. I don't know if that answers your question. It kind of was like a long diatribe.
I think you did great. I was just kind of curious how you got from, whatever your first career might have been to now. It sounds like there's a lot of similarities between you and a lot of the other pastors that I have ever known in my life. They hear a call, but they push it away until they're ready. And then when they're ready, they easily go through the process, become a pastor, and get called somewhere where I get to meet them. That's usually how it works for me. I have met many a pastor in my day, and they always have these twisty, windy journeys where they refuse to take the call the first time they heard it. And it sounds like your first role in life was to be a mom. And there's nothing wrong with that. And then I heard some church secretary in there. And then eventually you went to seminary, you did your internship, your residency, and now you're here. And it sounds to me like this is your first call. Is that right?
Yes, this is my first call.
What a great call.
Yeah.
How do you like Perrysburg?
Perrysburg is wonderful. It feels like a small town in some ways, and I grew up in very small towns, while having the benefit of access to resources and diversity in ways small towns don't. And it's so beautiful. I remember our first time driving through Perrysburg along, I'm terrible at street names, like along the river.
You're new here.
Along the river, right at the end of Louisiana. What road is
Front
that?
Street.
Front Street. That's a perfect name. And it was so like quintessential in my mind as we drove through, and it was beautiful, and there was the water and these historic homes and people walking along. And I had this moment of relief. Like, this is idyllic. And it's not perfect. I mean, life is challenging everywhere you are and for whomever we are. And just in that moment, I took a deep breath and felt at home. And that was so welcome in that moment after a very long move and a lot of uncertainty. And so this place definitely has captured a piece of my heart. And I'm very glad to be here.
Oh, good. Well, welcome to Perrysburg. You live here now, right? In the Burg.
In the Burg, yes.
Nice. A lot of times I'll interview Perrysburg residents and ask them, what brought you here? I think you checked that box. And then why do you like living here? I know you mentioned the river, the views, the historic homes, and just feeling, but is there anything else that you would like to add to that? Why do you like living here?
I love parts about living here that don't really have anything to do necessarily with Perrysburg. Moving here was the first time we lived close to family in a way that we could be a present support for each other. My brother and sister-in-law moved to Perrysburg 2 days after we got here. So we helped them move to Perrysburg, and that's ultimately why we live in Perrysburg. And then my sister moved from Idaho a couple months after that, so we could all be together for the first time.
What? They moved from Idaho to Perrysburg?
Well, my sister lives in Maumee.
Oh, okay.
Which we like.
Northwest Ohio.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's great.
Yes. And so being close to family certainly helps secure the feeling of home. And my children, I have 4 children. My oldest is a senior at Montana State, so they're still in Bozeman. My twins are 15, and my youngest is 10. So we started here as a family, and Perrysburg is very family-oriented. There are all sorts of learning opportunities and activities in general. There are different ways to engage in the community. And this is different for me, coming from small town Montana and small town Idaho, where everything is far apart. There are access to resources close to Perrysburg, which make living here feel even better.
I think you can get your needs met, is what I'm hearing you say.
Yes. Yes, thank you. That's exactly it.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I get it. Well, let's talk more about Zoar, shall we?
Yeah.
Okay. For anybody who is looking for a church home, I consider Zoar to be a good one among the many choices here in Perrysburg. Pastor Melanie, why do you feel that Zoar is a great church home for a prospective, new, or current Perrysburg, Ohio resident?
Zoar is next year, we will be celebrating our 175th anniversary. We are a generational structure here in this community, and that's evident to me in the way people engage here and feel at home. We offer a traditional service, so we have traditional liturgy. We offer Holy Communion at every worship normally. That also has a way of feeling like home to people. But bigger than that, I have experienced Zoar as somebody coming in new not that long ago, and there is a deep sense of welcome here. There are so many opportunities to engage in community. We have programming for everybody that I would go on and on forever to talk about. But what that really implies to me is this intention of connection that the congregation continues to have, not only for members here at Zoar, but to continue to reach out into the community of Perrysburg and out into the world beyond that. There are so many beautiful places of worship, and they have different feelings and fits for people. And my hope is that when people come here to Zoar, that they experience the really authentic welcome from here, that they know that they are wanted and welcomed here, and that they experience that same belonging from how they learn about God in our worships and all of the other ways you can engage here from, oh gosh, pickleball.
Right here on the campus of Zoar.
Oh, yeah. Pickleball is a big deal here. I haven't even tried it yet. I'm a little scared.
People play pickleball in the church.
Yes, we have in our family life center is a pickleball court. And Tuesday, basically, from the beginning of the day all the way till way in the end, people are playing pickleball.
How fun.
Yeah. We have Bible studies, support groups, Sunday school, youth activities, adult forums, worship. Worship is a part of the heart of who we are here. It's how we continue to be fed to do the work of Jesus out in the world.
Well said. Now that we're on to the topic of worship services, tell me a little bit about when the worship services are and who leads them. I know you're one of at least two pastors. Let's hear about that.
Yeah. So I'm one of two. Pastor Paul is the other pastor, and we make a great team, in my opinion. And we alternate leading worship in different ways. So we have worship on Saturdays at 6 p.m., and then Sunday during our normal year, which runs from after Labor Day through Memorial Day. That sounds right. Our Sunday worship is 8:30 a.m. and 11 a.m. And then this summer, we tried a 10 a.m. service on Sunday, which was lovely. So Pastor Paul and I tend to alternate who preaches and who presides over communion. And Saturdays, you'll get one of us, which will depend on our schedules and who's preaching.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice. Is there one that's a little bit bigger? You know, there's more people at it, perhaps because people sleep in on Sundays or something like that. Which of the two during the, I guess you'd say, after Labor Day crowd, which one's the larger one?
That is hard to answer. I'm still fairly new here. And in my experience so far, they tend to be pretty equal or they shift back and forth. So there's not one that I could say for certain is always bigger. Typically, Saturdays have familiar faces, and it has a more laid back feel in my experience. But it's the same liturgy and the same service. And then Sunday morning, 8:30 and 11, I would say 11 tends to have more families typically, but that's not always true.
Okay. And how about Sunday school? When's Sunday school?
Sunday school is in between our 8:30 and 11 a.m. worship. About 9:45 to 10 o'clock is when it starts. And we have Sunday school for all ages. Our director of youth and family ministries does an amazing job incorporating different ways of experiencing God for our young people. And then we have a small but committed group that comes to adult Sunday school, and there's always room for more. And then coming up this fall, we are doing a once a month adult forum that will take the place of Sunday school for adults that week. That will help us lean into dialogue of the intersectionality of our lives of faith out in the world. So we'll be in conversation about politics and science and all of the things that are relevant in our lives and also are relevant in our lives of faith.
Good to know. And I know that you also have confirmation classes. Tell me about those.
Yes, we offer confirmation, usually for young people who are in 7th and 8th grade, but that varies depending on the need and experience of the family. That is an intentional space of learning about our particular denomination and our faith and our biblical journey that gives young people awareness and then an invitation to affirm their baptism. In our tradition, we baptize people normally when they're infants, and then confirmation becomes a time of learning and intentionality so then they can affirm their faith for themselves and then engage more fully into the life of the church.
When you say more fully, they become a full-fledged adult member of the church with voting rights and all the things, right?
Exactly. Yes.
My son, Derek, who's now 19 years old and off at college, went to confirmation classes here at Zoar. He had a wonderful experience. Pastor Tim happened to be the lead pastor at the time. There was another pastor, I forget his name at the time, sorry, but he had a really good experience. And I just wanted to put it out there that people who have a Lutheran child who want to have their child confirmed don't necessarily have to stay at their own church. They can come here. Would you like to talk about that?
Yes. So our confirmation classes are definitely open to any young people in that age range normally, whose families and themselves hopefully want to engage in an intentional time of learning to affirm their faith. So, for example, if you attend a different church and confirmation was part of your tradition growing up, or your faith community doesn't offer confirmation, you are certainly welcome to come here or bring your child here. We would love to be a part of their faith journey, knowing that we are a bigger community overall.
I appreciate that welcoming spirit and that openness to welcome in people from other churches. I think that's great. My son had a really good experience here. Off mic, before we started recording, I was talking to Pastor Melanie about how my son Derek's favorite part was playing basketball in the gym and eating pizza before class. So just for anybody listening to this who's thinking, oh, I don't know if my child wants to sit in more classes, it's not all just classes. There's some team building type things too. You get to know your classmates.
Yeah. And we are this year embarking on a slightly different approach to confirmation. We are having once a month classes, and then we're trying to build in experiences in between that take us out of our learning and into the community in different ways. So we're hoping to be invited to visit different places of worship, of different faith traditions, to engage in different areas of the community so our kids can grow in faith through experience.
Nice. That sounds very much like a youth group.
Yeah, not dissimilar to a youth group where our focus continues to be on connection and relationship with an awareness that we are loved and wanted by God exactly as we are. And we are called into that love by how we accept and are curious about and welcome our neighbors.
Yes, and having those shared experiences kind of reinforces that. We all experienced this thing together, and we can go out into the world and perpetuate it.
Yes.
Yeah, be curious further and be inclusive further. I like those messages. Pastor Melanie, what would you say Zoar is known for in the community?
That's a hard question. I would say my experience of Zoar informs my understanding that Zoar is known for their sense of welcome and presence in the community. Zoar is present. They continue to show up in dynamic ways, both inside and outside the walls of the church. They continue to open the building to different needs and uses of the community and to really genuinely welcome people to come and connect here. And then we go out and work to connect in other ways in the community. Zoar is a place of neighbors. And while we are not perfect and we all have a lot of work to do, my first experiences here at Zoar were that here were people who loved their neighbors. And I experienced that every weekend and in moments where I get to connect with people in the real parts of their life. We are people who are broken and we experience suffering and hard moments. And we are invited to bring those together into community to help support each other as a real living embodiment of Christ, which is hard work.
Well, yeah, practicing what you preach or walking the walk, so to speak. Yeah, that's hard work because we all get challenged in our lives.
Yes, that's really hard work. And we get to be reminded of that together in our worship and our different ways we connect here at Zoar, just as other faith communities experience this also. We get to be fed and then sent out together, which is really powerful.
Yes. You mentioned there are things that happen inside the church, and then there's things that you go out into the community and do. Let's talk about a few of each. There's blood drives here. There's worship services, of course, Sunday school. What else is on the list?
We get to live generously through our building very often, which is wonderful. As you mentioned, blood drives. We have blood drives here all the time, which is such a gift to be able to participate in. And we get to host different scouting troops and pickleball, I mentioned.
Yeah.
Community basketball is every Monday night. What else? We have our normal programming, which is worship and Sunday school and youth activities, Bible studies, grief groups, and book club.
Book club's a good one to end on. Let's talk about outside of the building. What does Zoar do outside the building?
A lot of things happen outside our building. What's coming to mind right now is our engagement with Perrysburg Christians United. We help collect items that are needed every month, and then that becomes a part of their giving to the community. We also are participants of Wood County Area Ministries, or WAM, that helps provide resources to different people in the county with different needs. Recently, we were proud to participate in Toledo Pride through a collaborative called Better Together Faith Communities United for Pride, which was born of an idea that I had with my good friend, Reverend Megan Allen Miller, who's an Episcopal priest, about what it would look like as an embodiment of inclusion for people of faith to come together for this powerful message of love and welcome that many of us believe very strongly in. And Zoar was able to be a part of that, and it was so beautiful. Over 300 people from more than 30 different faith communities across 9 different denominations and faith traditions came together to walk together in Toledo Pride in the parade. And we also had some people who were able to participate in different ways at a booth at Trinity Episcopal. And then following that intention of connection, Zoar shared a booth with 6 different ELCA congregations from around the Toledo area so that we could continue to share this message of love and welcome in ways that were evident in how we were coming together to do it.
Teamwork makes the dream work. I like that. I love that so many denominations came together. A lot of people didn't know that Toledo Pride Parade was in August. You know, a lot of Pride parades are in June. So how long in advance had you been planning that?
Yeah, we started working on this in February. So Megan was ordained in December. I was ordained in January. And we hit the ground running with this idea in February. And it continues to humble me and give me hope how many different people and faith communities were hungry for a way to connect in this message of love, which sometimes gets drowned out by all the different voices coming at us as we go through our lives.
Thank you for being a force for good and showing us how inclusion should work. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Anything else that happens outside the building that you'd like to talk about before we move on?
Well, I'm sure there is. I just can't think of anything.
I know, nothing like being put on the spot on a recorded conversation.
I know Zoar has participated at different times in the different community events of Perrysburg, like homecoming or the fall parades and festivals. And I think we're planning on participating in an upcoming fall festival and having a booth, which is exciting because we love to connect with people. And we also hosted just a few months ago an eclipse party during the eclipse, which makes sense. That was a community-wide event. And so people from Perrysburg community and beyond came to have a meal and some education about eclipse. And it was a fun way to get together in a new way for a memorable historical event.
That was historic. I remember the kids didn't have school. And yeah, that was kind of a big day. Yeah. And it happened right at the end of the school day, kind of. So yeah, we watched the whole thing in my backyard. It was nice that you guys had a watch party. I didn't realize that.
Well, it wasn't a watch party. We did this the day before the eclipse.
Oh, good to know. See,
yeah,
I didn't know that either.
But a watch party would be fun. Maybe in like 40 years, I can't remember how often they come around.
It doesn't happen very often. Yeah. Another thing that I just wanted to make sure to ask you about is that the ELCA has these gatherings, youth gatherings, and there was a big one in New Orleans this summer, and Zoar certainly sent youth there. Would you like to talk about that?
So in the ELCA, normally every 3 years we have a youth gathering, which is an opportunity for Lutheran young people from around the country to gather together in one city to grow in faith and relationship through experiences and dynamic speakers and awesome ways of engaging community. Because of challenges related to COVID, our gathering ended up being 6 years between. And so in July, we were able to go to New Orleans for the gathering. The theme was Created to Be, and we were privileged to take young people from Zoar and Lutheran Church of the Master, which is a relationship we hold very dear here. We had the most amazing time. It was very, very hot.
I heard about that. And I heard you had mostly girls too.
Yes, we had all girls with the exception of Pastor Mark, who did a very good job, and now we call him Papa Smurf.
Oh, yeah, he wore a T-shirt with Papa Smurf on it one day.
Yeah, it was great. We were able to hear people from different walks of life and different experiences share their stories with us in big arena settings. And we were able to engage in smaller activities throughout the week. We did a lot of walking, and we were invited into a posture of compassion with each other and with the people we encountered from different communities in New Orleans, people who have had different journeys in life, oftentimes very challenging. And we were able to encounter Jesus in so many different ways. It was such a wonderful experience. We are very privileged here at Zoar. We have a foundation, and the foundation is open to anyone to write grants from out in the community for different needs. And one of our endowment funds is geared towards youth. We were able to get a grant that helped support our going and experience to New Orleans. And I continue to be grateful for the ways Zoar is intentional about living faithfully through the gifts that we've been given.
It's kind of the gift that keeps on giving. I've heard about that foundation and how they help the youth go to all these gatherings, because there used to be a lot of fundraisers and things like that. And sometimes there still are fundraisers, but you don't have to raise as much funds. As parents, we get taxed with a lot of stuff, uniforms, school supplies, clothing, shoes all the time, all the things. Learning about God is very important, and it's really nice to not have that as an obstacle in the way. And I love how you talked about how they created a safe space to learn about others, in New Orleans. I have never been to something that large, but I have seen pictures. And when you were talking about an arena space, I believe you called it, I can't imagine having that many young people in that space, but that's really quite amazing to create that safe space and introduce young people to people who may not be like them or have had the same life experiences, but then to kind of pull that red thread through that we're all children of God and you're all welcome here. I just love that. That gives me chills.
Yeah, it was beautiful. I highly encourage people to take the opportunity, if they have it, to attend a youth gathering.
Yes, well said. Well said. Thank you for sharing about that. Well, I have a better understanding of what you do in the building and outside the building now. As we start to wrap this up, I just want to talk a little bit more about your web presence. People like to explore the internet when they're trying to find a church home, when they're church shopping. So is there anything on your website that they should be sure to see, or anything on your social media channels that is like the number one thing they should check out?
We try very hard to be accessible to people in all the different ways that people connect. And so we stream our worship services on YouTube and on Facebook. We also have online giving for our offering. And our website currently is under construction. There was a code malfunction on our domain host. And so we have an opportunity now to rebuild in a way we get to reflect on what our priorities are for our web presence. which is not something we bargain for. And it is a welcome opportunity for us to continue to reflect on what's important for us to share about who we are, so that people know how to connect with us in different ways. So more on that will be coming soon. We have a fairly active Facebook page, and we on that offer a weekly moment for pause and reflection called 314. We take turns doing that, our different members of staff. So our director of youth and family ministries, Corinne, will do one Tuesday a month, and our director of music, Jacob, he will do one. And then Pastor Paul and I switch off, and we do one or two every month. And it's a moment for people to be invited in to reflect on different things that might be going on in their lives and out in the world, and to be centered again in community and faith.
I'll have to check that out. On your Facebook page, you're saying it's called the 314 or the 314?
Yeah, it's 314. So it's Tuesdays at 3:14 p.m. on our Facebook. Every now and then there's a bit of a delay, but we try to be on time at 3:14. 3:14 is our address on Indiana Avenue.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like that. It's like in code.
Yeah.
No, that's cool when people do that. All right, I'll have to check that out. I know that a lot of young people especially are into social media, and sometimes parents pick churches because of their children. And I think it's important for both the parents and the children to be able to see what Zoar is all about. And that Facebook page, when you're talking about the Tuesdays at 3:14 p.m., I'm sure that there are archives of what you're talking about, right? So that's a really good introduction as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, thank you for telling me about that. Well, is there anything coming up that you would like to promote? As we're recording this, it's September 4th, 2024. What's coming up for Zoar?
Yes. So as I mentioned earlier, next year is our 175th anniversary, and it's such an honor to be a source of God's love for so long. And we will be continuing to reflect on how we want to celebrate that together in community. So people listening, there will be some different events, and we think quarterly meals, some guest preachers and musicians, and hopefully many invitations for people to come together to celebrate and remember the ministry of Zoar over the years. In the beginning of October, we have a Global Refuge Weekend. One of our many committees, the Social Ministry Committee, has organized an event where we will be visited and learn more about Global Refuge, the work they do, and ways we can engage and participate. There is a pet blessing on October 20th at 1:30. That'll be out in the parking lot, and people are welcome to bring their beloved pets for a blessing and a picture if they would rather. This is something I'm excited about. I love animals, really of all kinds, so that'll be exciting. November 3rd is All Saints Sunday. This is one of our special opportunities to remember loved ones who have died in the last year as a part of our extended table of saints with God for all time. And then, last but not least, November 9th, I wrote some of these down because I knew I would forget. We have been working for the last year, I believe, on a stained glass window refurbishment. I don't know if that's the right word, project, where our windows are being cared for lovingly in the sanctuary so they shine bright for generations to come. And one of the events coming up in November is going to be an evening event through the panes of the stained glass windows that will include a hymn sing, I believe. I don't know all the details yet, but it's going to be very memorable, and the community will be welcome to attend. It is I believe part of our fundraising for the Window Project and a way to come together and really live into the music and the memories that are a part of the community here at Zoar.
I wish you all the luck in the world. I hope all of those projects and events go fantastic. And thank you for everything you and Zoar do in the Perrysburg community.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Pastor Melanie, thank you for being on the Perrysburg podcast. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks again to Pastor Melanie Forrey for being my guest today on episode 62 of the Perrysburg podcast. We heard all about Zoar Lutheran Church, as well as what brought Pastor Melanie to Perrysburg from Montana and why she likes living here. To learn more about Pastor Melanie, you can read her bio in the show notes. If you are a prospective, new, or current Perrysburg, Ohio resident and you're looking for a church home, consider Zoar Lutheran Church in Perrysburg. And when you see Pastor Melanie, please let her know that you heard her interview with me here on the Perrysburg podcast. As a reminder, worship services at Zoar Lutheran Church are on Saturdays at 6 p.m. and Sundays at 8:30 and 11 a.m., and they may have different hours in the summer. So if you find this in the future, go ahead and check zoarlutheran.com for hours. As a reminder, they have the live stream to Facebook, or you can check out previous week's services, and those are on Zoar's Facebook page. I will put a link to Zoar's Facebook page in the show notes on perrysburgpodcast.com. What else is in the show notes? I have Pastor Melanie's bio, so you can learn more about her. I also have a link to Zoar's website, their Instagram page, their YouTube channel, PCU Food Pantry, WHAM, which is Wood County Area Ministries, my email address, just in case you want to nominate someone for the Faith Community Leader series here on the Perrysburg podcast, the link to sign up for the weekly newsletter for this podcast, and more. Everything you need is on perrysburgpodcast.com. If you know someone who might like this episode, please share it with them. And if you like this podcast, please subscribe to or follow the Perrysburg podcast on your favorite podcast player and YouTube to get each new episode right when it comes out. Thanks for listening today. I will talk to you next Friday.